Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Helené Basson. I'm an orthopedic surgeon from Pretoria. I'm also the founder and CEO of a charity called Operation Healing Hands. We're a non-profit company, started in 2016. We wanted the private sector to give back to the community by helping the government patients on the waiting lists that we know are never going to get helped. We wanted to take them, bring them in the private sector, and then operate them for free as part of community service. So the idea is not that a small group of doctors do a lot of work. The idea was that the whole community each do one patient a year. And in that way, we really can make a big difference by helping the bunch of patients that are just sitting there that we know will never really get the help they need. So this is just some background. We'll give you some more information as we go along. But the question is to reach or not to reach. So the first thing is, should we bother? Do you actually care enough to want to make a difference? So I specifically said that you need to want to make a difference. If you don't, you'll get your ethic points at the end of the session, have a look at your iPhone, sort out your photos, sort out your emails. But if you do, then I can give you some advice on how to evaluate any charity. It doesn't need to be a medical charity. How to evaluate the charity, how to look at doctors, how to look at patients and see who are the ones that we're supposed to help. Literally all the ethical questions we wonder about. So in first world countries, about 10% of the population stays behind, in the sense that nobody actually gets to help them. They just fall through the system. Now, we're a third world country. So how many people do you think actually falls through a system in a third world country? I mean, I can promise you it's much more than 10%. So whose responsibility is it to help those that fall through the system? So if we look at this card, this Steve Biko arthroplasty card that one of my patients arrived with asking for help, there's more than 1,000 patients waiting on the waiting list just to get into the clinic. Never mind the 1,000 waiting on the list that are already in the clinic. So this patient finally made it to the clinic, was seen a few times. Last time she was seen, she got a card that said, please come back for your follow-up in 2 years. So who changes their world? Those patients that we talk about. Politicians, big companies, the private sector, communities or charities. Because we give a lot of money to a lot of those institutions, but are they the ones who really help these people? So we're going to evaluate charities. So we're going to look at a few things now. I'm quoting a lot from Dan Pallotta. Those of you who don't know him, he's got an absolutely brilliant TED Talk that was rated as one of the most viewed TED Talks ever. Dan Pallotta is CEO of massive outreach companies. And a lot of what I'm going to say will come from his lectures and his textbooks. So why is it so difficult for charities to change the world? So the thing is, charity is an emotional subject. It's not a rational concept. When we think of charities, we get emotional, you know? You either have a heart for medical outreach, or you have a heart for the little stray dog that's sitting there on the corner. You know, we get emotional about charities, but we also tend to perceive charities like, yeah, I'll give to this charity, but you know, you have this set of rules that you apply to them, saying, yeah, but you know, all the money must go to the little dog. You know, I want to see him get all the food he needs. And so if we go back into the Latin and we look at what non-profit actually means, so the word profit perfectus means to progress, and the verb proficere means to advance. So non-profit actually means no advance and absolutely no progress. So it's the only thing in the economic world that starts with a negative. You know, it's like you've lost before you've even started the charity. So what's interesting is there's actually an origin of where charities come from. And it comes from the 1600s, from the early Puritans who came from America and settled in New England. So the Puritan religion said that the self is depraved. So they really actually came here and set up an economic system that was developed that indulged self-interest. So they set up free market capitalism, but they felt that they needed to be almost chastised for the money they were making. And then charity was developed and became the monument to this belief. a compensation for human depravity. So they could actually do penance for the fact that they were in a free capital market and were making money. So we've always had this set of ideas that charity needs to be non-profitable and small and undermined, even though we want charity to achieve big things. So what is our perception? We expect charities to perform miracles with the bare minimum. And I'm not talking just about medical, we're talking about charities in general. So we're talking about minimal overheads, minimal salaries, minimal advertising and marketing. So now I was debating, yes, should we spend money coming down to the SAOA and set up a display here? Or, but then you think, okay, how much traction will I get if I print home flyers and put them up in the laundromat, compared to coming down here and speaking at the conference? But we're coming all the way from Pretoria. So the flight ticket is, well, luckily not mine, but my staff, it's something that you take away from a patient. And I'm thinking, yeah, I could have helped a patient with that. But in the end, if we don't have the capacity to advertise and compete with the for-profit world, then we've got no foot to stand on. It's like cutting us off at the knees. So there's another thing that they say, we actually feel that people should give without having been asked, which is also interesting, because how many times have you actually given without somebody asking you? So something to think about. And here's a very interesting concept that Dan Pallotta explained, which was very interesting for me. So it's okay for us to see people making a lot of money, not helping people. For instance, you can make violent video games for children. You'll be on the Forbes magazine, be hailed as the entrepreneur of the century, making millions of dollars, not helping anybody. And then if you are a CEO of a non-profit company and you have an MBA, and that same guy from Stanford that has an MBA goes to the for-profit sector, he makes 4 times what the CEO makes, but he can take $100,000, donate it to the charity, and sit on the board and tell the CEO what to do. And everybody hails him as a philanthropist. So there's nobody that really is excellent goes into charity because it's absolutely not worth it. But nobody wants to see the CEO of the charity get a salary that the MBA, the guy with the MBA from Stanford gets in the for-profit sector. So it's okay to make money not helping people, but it's not okay to make profit helping people. So what is our perception? This belief system around charities is what's preventing charities from reaching their potential. And people and communities served by charities don't care what the overheads are, they care what we do for them. They don't want to see, yes, how much money are you spending? They want to see, what are you actually doing with the money? Are we being helped? And they want high performance. And to get high performance, you need good people, you need excellent people, you need people with skills in the sector. So what's the difference now between, like we've been talking about it, non-profit versus for-profit? It's important that when you decide on a charity, that you give them in your mind, you give them equal rights with the rest of the economic world. They need to be entitled to the same rules of free market capitalism. And charities should make a profit, but here's the difference. That profit goes back into the cause, and that's where the difference comes in. Now, what's interesting is now, how do we evaluate an NGO to say, okay, now I want to do something, I want to support NGOs, but how do I evaluate them? So there's actually a formal set of rules. The USAID has got the sustainability model where they look at 7 things, you can look it up. And this is how you evaluate the charity. If you want to donate or you want to give back to a charity, you look at these things because these are important. This is what tells you this charity is worth donating to. So first of all, legal. Are all their things in place? Are they compliant? Organizational capacity. Do they have the capacity and the expertise to actually do what they're saying they do? Well, how good is their service provision? You know, are you running a soup kitchen at 5% at 5% overhead, but you're giving like watered down soup, it's week old? You know, or you're having like a 20% overhead, but you're giving quality soup to twice the amount of people, you know. Then financial viability, advocacy, which is so important, because if we look at the previous lecture, I mean, you still, as a charity, need to take responsibility and say, are we doing what we say we're doing? Infrastructure and assets, and then public image. Unfortunately, in the times of social media, I would have loved to do this job without having one bit of social media, but unfortunately, it's the world we live in. We need to be see-through. You need to be able to look at the charity and say, I can see where the money is going. So if you ever ask questions about charity, the ones that you should ask is, do they get the job done? What are the results that they have? Are the problems being solved that they talk about? What is the impact? Is it sustainable? And then are they accountable for what they are actually saying? So then now we come to the medical specialists. Because this is a orthopedic congress, we're talking about the doctors specifically. If it was I presenting to companies, then I would have given all the stats surrounding companies, but now we're going to talk about doctors. So we are sitting in the top 1% of this country in terms of academics and finances. We earn, as specialists, on average, the highest salary in the whole of South African professions. We are also in the 1% of people in this country who have an M degree, and most other people have a lot more. You know, but I mean, on average, to be an orthopedic surgeon, you need to have an M, which already puts you in the top 1%. So, in terms of those things, we are the cream of the crop. And you're coming from a position of power. Now, Udette always references all the sports stuff. I can't run to save my life, so I'll go with Spider-Man. And where his uncle said, with great power comes great responsibility. So we all know it's a Marvel movie, but the point is it's still true. So we're sitting in a position of power, and we need to be responsible. We've got the power, and we need to do something with it. So now you can say, oh, but I suffered so much. I remember not sleeping every third day in ICU. My Crocs were doing their own wardrobe when I was taking them off, and but Abraham Lincoln said, nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power. And that we see from all the dictators in the previous 100 years or so. You know, every time somebody comes into power, everything changes, and then they actually see what they do with it. You know, so what are you doing with the power with what you're sitting with now? Okay, so now we come to the patients. I'm going to use Operation Healing Hands as stats so that we can talk about some interesting points of who do we help. Because the question is always, you know, unfortunately life isn't fair. You cannot help everyone. And you can't necessarily help the ones that are most in need. So let's, for instance, say the waiting list in arthroplasty. I can't help number one through the charity because they've been on the waiting list for 10 years. It's got a severe valgus knee, which is so unstable that nobody can operate it, and that I needed 200,000 Rand prosthesis to fix in a 75-year-old. But I can help the guy who's number 1,000, who is maybe 45 years old, sitting with a unilateral osteoarthritic knee, and actually needs a primary prosthesis, which I can do for between 50 and 80,000 Rand in our charity. So it's not fair, but we need to look at patients and then say, who are we going to help? So what we try is to help as most patients as possible with the least amount of money, and then do as much as we can. So these are the stats for Operation Healing Hands. The grey one is the children, orange is the pensioners, and then the blue part is the working adults. Now this is Wanga. She had a PDA repair. We started our project at Zuid-Afrikaans Hospital for the congenital heart disease together with the pediatric cardiologists last year. And we've done almost 20 of these children. Now, we all want to save the children. Wanga would have died of heart failure. She's now fine. So, but the other two parts are where the problems come in. So just before we continue with that, I want to show you a concept. I don't know how well you know it, but this is the daily. This is the disability adjusted life years. So what they are looking at is your adjusted life years is the years that you live with a disability and the years that you lost your life early. So let's take, for instance, diabetes as an example. If you have severe diabetes and by 40 you lose your first leg, by 50 you lose your second leg, and then you die at 60, you lived for 20 years with a disability and you lost your life 10 years early because of the diabetes. So you have a 30-year disability adjusted life years. Okay. Orthopedics, nobody dies from osteoarthritis, so we're basing in osteoarthritis just looking at years lived with a disability. And but they measure this, and then it's the number that you get is the years that you would have had a healthy life per 100,000 patients. Okay, so we're going to use that a little bit later. This is William. He had bilateral hip replacements. He's working and uninsured, like 12.6 million people in this country. So our population is more than 60 million, 15% has medical aid. So we got to that number by doing the stats. Everything is there if you want to read it, but the bottom line is the government can't cope with that 12.6 million uninsured working adults. These are the breadwinners in South Africa. And those are the ones we are trying to help through charities like Operation Healing Hands, because they need to go back into the economy. This is Judith Zaba. She's got a beautiful story. So Judith was on the waiting list for years. Nobody wanted to operate her because on a card it said osteoarthritis knee. But every time she comes to the clinic, she had a severe deformity because she had a malunion of a tibia. But so she then needed an osteotomy and she needed the knee replacement. And she only had one child. Then her sister died and she was suddenly a mother of 4. Then her brother died and then she ended up being a mother of 7. She's a domestic worker. Now, I'm asking you, what is it worth to put that breadwinner back into the economy? Or what I should flip the question around and ask, how much of your tax money will go to those 7 children, sustaining them when this patient can't work anymore? So, for the money we spend to fix her is not comparable to what we pay if we don't fix her. The years lived with disability for osteoarthritis is 255 years for every 100,000 patients. So that's the stats for osteoarthritis. Now we're looking at the elderly. Now we say, okay, but the old people, they're nice, but you know, should we really help them? We want to help the working uninsured. But then you get things like cataracts, because most of the elderly we treat is cataract patients. And then you see that 6 million people are blind in Africa since 1990 to 2020. In South Africa, 50% of blindness is due to cataracts. And then now you think, okay, so Oma is home alone, she's half blind, nobody looks after her because they have to work because they're the breadwinner. Now, Oma falls, has a femur fracture. For every femur fracture we have to operate, we can't do an elective hip replacement. And for every fracture, well, like I already said, you guys know how it goes into the government sector. All the trauma comes in, we don't get to the elective surgery. But the alternative is, Oma falls, has 1 femur fracture, we fix it, she goes back. Now, her daughter has to stay at home and not work because she has to look after the blind old person. So it's just like the chicken and the egg. Our global annual productivity loss is 0.3% of the GDP for visual impairment in this country. It's 22 billion rand. And the disability adjusted life years in sub-Saharan Africa for cataracts have the highest rate. It's 339 years lost of quality life for every 100,000 patients. So for us to nearly make up this deficit in visual impairment, we have to operate 2,000 cataracts for every million people in this country. In 2015, we were at the rate of 847 per million, and COVID was in between. So we're probably not even nearly what we were in 2015. So we all know what the economic impact is of a medical outreach program. You don't just have the direct impact, which is the patient. You have the indirect impact, which is the dependence, and then you have the induced impacts, which is the money that they earn that then goes down the economic trail, which sustains everything and helps it. It's just unbelievably important. So what is the solution? Now, as a group or as anybody, we can say, how do we help charities to change the world? So the first thing is you need to change the way you think about charities. You need to give them the freedom to spend money in a way that will raise the most profit for the cause. We need support from bodies like the SAOA, who, by the way, endorse us, and take it seriously and to set an example and say, we want our community to do outreach. We need to create a culture where everyone with the potential to give buys into this cause. It's really important. My dream is that one day every private specialist operates one charity patient a year. Just one, because it's enough if we all just operate one. You literally need to go and say, haven't you done your charity patient this year yet? What's wrong with you? You know? And then we need empowerment through word of mouth. This is really important. You need to promote this. The same way Odette said, you need to promote the SAOA. But if we don't do it, you have to. So just some things about Operation Healing Hands. I was very proud this year of what we've achieved and with my team. Since July 2016, we started as a Mandela project, and by July this year, we operated more than 1,000 patients. And considering we only did 14 in the first year, and we had COVID in the middle, it was quite cool. So primary health patients we've helped is 785. We've done, by the end of July, 1,052 patients that we operated, all surgical disciplines, ENT, gynae, cervical cancers, cataracts, orthopedics, arthroplasty. We did 105 arthroplasty patients since 2016. We had 1% complication rate because we choose them well. We operate number 1,000 on the list and not number 1, but we have to because we need to operate as many as we can. And then we had 0 lawsuits. So just want to show you, this was at my hospital at G-Marais, where everybody came together in the spirit of things. And just quickly, we operate at 18% of what the surgery is worth. So we've done almost 50 million rand of work at 18% of the cost, because the service is free. And because everybody gives us discount and all the companies donate, and Ampath and Lancet and the blood guys are on board, and because everybody gives a little bit, we can actually run this and we can do surgery at 18%, so 50 million rands worth of work in the last 8 years. Wanted to join for the day that we operated patient number 1,000. Kendra is very special. She had a massive congenital nevus on her face when she was born. She had multiple surgeries and then had this deformed face. So we put an expander in. That's why she's got that bubble on her head. So she had this expander that the plastic surgeon put in. And it was the day that we're going to take it out and do a facial reconstruction for her. So there at the bottom you can see Miriam and Kendra. Miriam was our first patient. She had a hip replacement and Kendra was number 1,000. So when I started Operation Healing Hands, I went to my father. He was an orthopedic surgeon for 42 years. And I said, Dad, I want to start this. And I said, will you be part of it? And he said, I choose my own patient. And I was like, okay, who do you want to operate? He goes, Miriam. So he operated the first patient that Operation Healing Hands ever did. So here's Kendra. And you can see there, the sound's not on, but you can see everybody cheering. They made an archway for her and they were shouting. Everybody's shouting Operation Healing Hand. Miriam's claim to fame was number one, the whole way down the aisle. So this is my team. I'm unbelievably proud of them. They worked so hard this week. So just to give you an idea, if you want bang for your buck, what do you ask for consultation? If you think of it and you donate one consultation a month to a charity like ours, first of all, you get the tax benefit. You are actually forcing the government to donate to us by using the tax benefit. Then, because we work at 18% of what we do, you actually make an impact of 66,660 Rand a year. That is 0.67% of an average orthopedic surgeon's monthly profit. I went through all the stats. It's true. So it's not even 1% of your profit. I'm not talking about your turnover. And get this, it's a 455% return on investment. You will never, ever get so much back for 1,000 Rand. So to reach or not to reach, decide if you care enough to make a difference. Choose a charity. Yeah. So, listen to Madam President. Support OHH, sign the SAOA registry, and choose a charity with proper ethics, accountability, and impact. Set an example and be the change. Don't be the guy you have to drag to do something. I hate it when people talk and don't do anything. Just be the guy who sets an example. Create a culture of outreach, and then put your money where your mouth is. I can't tell you how many people talk to me and then they're like, oh, yeah, we love the idea, we want to give, but they never put their money where your mouth is. If you're not going to do it, don't waste anybody's time by talking about it. I feel really strong about this. If we, as the top 1%, if we don't set the bar on outreach, then who else will? Take-home message. Charities do change the world. Outreach matters, especially in medicine. Sustainability and growth is only possible through constant community support. We need governing bodies to support this. We need financial support. If you are called in your heart that you feel you want to work, then we need boots on the ground. We need word of mouth. And this is really important. Your purpose is not what you do, but it's what happens to people when you do what you do. Thank you so much. If you want to donate, there's the QR code. You all have a buff, you all have something there. There's our website. But this talk is not just about this. Choose a charity and give something back wherever you feel this is where your heart lies. Thank you so much.